Alright guys, I'm going to show you today how to spray heavy primers or high solids primers with an HVLP spray gun. There is something you're going to need to get the best results with HVLP, and that is one of these bypass regulators and either a pressure cup. A pressure cup or a PPS cup, which is what I prefer. Or you can use a pressure pot. You can also use a double diaphragm pump. But what I've found with these heavier primers is that a double diaphragm pump, at least the one that I have, doesn't handle heavy primers real well. The same way with a pressure pot, you can do it. You have to increase your pressure in your pot a little more than you would for like a top coat that's a little thinner. But you can use all of those. But what I'm going to show you today is how to use the PPS cup and this bypass regulator. Okay, so what I'm using here is a really thick primer. What I do with these primers is I do cut the viscosity just a little bit with water. I don't like to go more than about 3%. So I aim for between 2 to 3%. You could technically spray this with no water. You could. But I found that water, just a little bit of water, even with top coats and HVLP, usually helps just atomize a little better. So of course, the better your atomization, the less sanding you have to do. So there's kind of this fine line between getting build on your finish versus smooth, so you don't have to do much sanding. In a refinish job where you've got already like a seal coat on the wood, then you can actually cut the primer a little more. You could go up to 5% with a lot of primers and just get a little smoother coat, so you have a lot less sanding, and that's really all you need. You're not trying to like seal the wood, because in a refinish job the wood's already sealed off. But what I'm spraying is brand new cabinet doors. It's a soft maple frame with an MDF panel, and I want to get the most build possible. So I could go straight out of the can, but I am going to cut it just a little bit, and I found that most primers, you can cut them with water by 2 to 3% and just get a little better flow out and get a finer finish with a little less sanding and still get the build you need. All right, so I'm going to mix this up and then we'll get started here just shortly. Okay, so here's the secret for spraying these heavy primers with an HVLP gun. You're going to need a bypass regulator and a PPS cup. This bypass regulator you can buy from Total Finishing Supplies, and it's like $130 some, but it is worth getting. I've got 2 of these. If you've got the gun on the top or the cup on the top, you're going to want a long enough hose to go up here. I just have a small hose for the bottom cup, which I prefer the bottom cup. So anyway, PPS cup with this bypass regulator, you don't need a lot of pressure in the PPS cup. Only between 2 to 4 psi. These usually come with like a yellow knob right here. You can adjust them. Both of mine, I broke the yellow knob. I don't know what happened. They just get bumped and they break off. But you can still adjust this little knob. All right, so what I'm going to do, I got 2 cabinet doors. And that's basically why I'm using PPS cup, just a small amount of paint. I mixed up enough to do these doors, both sides, 2 times. I mixed it all at one time because this first coat's going to dry that fast that my paint's not going to harden in the PPS cup, even though it has catalyst in it. I'm going to come back in about 30 minutes. I'm going to be ready for the second coat. All right, so let's get this wind fired up, and I'm going to get on my helmet and turn the air down. I'm going to show you what it looks like with very low air. Okay, so there's a lot of splatter right there. Turn my air up. Much better. Turn it up just a little more. Better yet. There's not a whole lot of difference between these two, so what I try to do is go down as low as I can. I'd say that's pretty good. I'll show you what the fan pattern adjustment can do. I'll turn that down. Pretty good. All right, let's let that air compressor turn off so you can hear me better. All right, I got a little bit of primer left in here. I put on a really light coat, so that's actually going to be dry in probably 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I'm going to give it 20, 30 minutes. I'm going to come back and spray the rest of this primer on there. Basically considered a wet on wet coat. It's going to be completely dry to the touch. I'll be able just to knock down really, really lightly with a pad. I'll use this 320 pad. It's that light coat that I put on, the only purpose of that is to raise the grain. That's about like the only purpose. I'm not trying to get full coverage at all. Because what will happen if you put a really heavy coat on to try to cover and raise grain, you're going to have a lot of sanding to do in between. So with this method, you could spray a light coat and get the same grain raise as you would with a heavy coat and almost no sanding. Really, there's been times when I've done no sanding. A wet on wet coat doesn't require sanding for adhesion. It would basically be just a quick scuff over to check, just to make it a little easier for the second coat in case it's really rough. The roughest spots sometimes are on the edges of the wood or the edge of MDF or something like that. I'll just do I'm not even worried about getting all the grain raised out or getting it perfectly smooth, just to knock a little bit of it down. All right, I'm going to give this about 20 minutes. I'm going to come back because my paint is going to harden in about 45 minutes to an hour. And so I have the ability to paint these doors both coats of primer with the same batch of paint in less than 1 hour. Okay, see you just shortly. All right, for some reason the sound wasn't working here. My voice didn't get recorded. So I'm just going to do a voiceover here. This is about 20 or 30 minutes afterward, and it was completely dry, actually sandable. It was that dry. And the secret again was because of the light coat that I did. I also had the heat turned up and I had a fan. And so the light coat just dries really, really quickly. Basically just knocking down some rough spots. The inside edges of a shaker door tend to be the roughest. And I do just quickly go over it and knock down like kind of that hairy, grainy stuff that comes up on the wood when you hit it with the first coat of primer. I don't sand this much at all. I'm not trying to knock it flat at all. There's been times when I haven't done any sanding between coats, where I'll just give it a good second coat and then knock it good with a sander afterward. And really, I could have done that. I just sometimes just feel a little better about hitting some of the roughest spots. Okay, so I was having a little issue here with this atomizing real well. And then I remembered that this primer I was using, it's a Nozzle primer, and I catalyzed this at 5%. And I haven't really had this issue until the summertime when it was really hot. And also I think the reason I had the issue now was because my shop was at 75 degrees. When it's really warm and you catalyze this stuff at 5%, it will set up really quickly. I've in the summertime actually had this stuff like get hard on me within about 20-30 minutes. And so I think that was my problem here. I should have only catalyzed this about 2%, which is what they're now recommending you do with the no-vol primers. So anyway, I didn't really stress out about it too much. I just kind of kept on going because I knew that I'm going to be able to sand it out on the primer coat anyway. So just something to think about. It's okay to mix up all your paint, leave it sit for 30 minutes and come back and do another coat, as long as, it's not too hot and your primer's got long enough pot life.